Am I buying a car? Today I'm going to talk you through my thoughts regarding the pros and cons of buying a car, challenges and the benefits, and just overall thoughts on what I'm thinking in terms of likelihood of me buying a car, why I might not, and that sort of thing. Let's get to it. What's going on, everyone? Dave K here today talking about, am I buying a car? That's the question we're talking about here today, so let's get into it. And of course, I'm wearing the blue here to match my last car. It was a really nice one. I enjoyed the hatchback over there that I used to have. Was a nice one back in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that lease expired in June of 2019. So the last car I had, June of 2019. It's been almost a year since I've had a car. Can you believe that? Crazy. And I'm going to talk with you through today of, am I going to buy a car? Like, let's just get to it, all right, So, am I buying a car? There are a lot of benefits to getting a car. Let me first tell you some of those benefits and why getting a car potentially is on my mind. Some of the benefits to having a car include it's just easier and cheaper to get around. Right now I use ride-sharing options, and I'm currently working remotely. I'm currently in Florida, and I'm very fortunate in both of those senses. And so in order to get around in the Florida area, I use ride-sharing options like Lyft, for example, to be able to get from point A to point B. But some of the challenges with apps like Lyft are it can be costly to get around, to get to everywhere you want to go. Example, you're trying to go to the theme parks. They're not extremely super-duper accessible, so you gotta get your transportation take you all the way over there. Can add up and be expensive. Secondly, you've got the accessibility of it. For example, you may call for a driver, and it may take quite a while if it's busier times, that sort of things. Versus if you own your own car, you can just kind of jump in the car and go where you're trying to go. And then, of course, that last one, which is definitely something to keep in mind, for me, a pretty big one, is the driver. Sometimes you get in the car, especially if you're in Florida, and, you're with the driver, and the driver seems like maybe they could use an afternoon nap before they drive a little bit more, or, that sort of thing, So just making sure that all the drivers are safe out there on the road is a big piece of why the car question comes to mind here today. So all of those factors can drive me to hesitate. They can't physically drive me anywhere, but they can drive me to hesitate on clicking that drive button on Lyft or any other ride-sharing app. They can cause that hesitation, make me say, am I sure I want to go somewhere? Therefore, less likely to go out and do fun things, which of course is never fun. It's less fun because you're not doing those fun things. But unless you're doing something fun at home, in which case it could be just as fun, if not more fun, especially right now. I'm just saying. All right. So we've covered that piece. You know why, the pros of getting a car, benefits to it. It makes sense. Now let's talk about the cons, the challenges of getting a car, and why maybe I won't be getting a car. For one, getting a car can be a very high cost, especially if you're getting a brand new car. A car is a depreciating asset, right? It loses value over time. It's not something that I could sell 20 years later and make a whole bunch of money on. No, that's why I mentioned the interest in real estate or my interest in stocks, whereas the car is a depreciating asset. I would buy it and it would instantly lose value for every mile that I put on it, which makes sense. It's providing me a service, getting me somewhere, and it's saving me the cost of the ride-sharing app, but it's still losing value over time and can be especially expensive the newer the vehicle is, right? As much as I want to say $500 a month or more for a car payment, not to mention car insurance on top of that, which you got to pay regardless of how expensive your car is. You buy your car in cash, you're still paying for car insurance. So those costs are a big factor that come to mind, and I'm like, is there a benefit to me to pay those recurring costs? And I think to myself, okay, what's the cost of car insurance? And that's a stock price that I have to pay regardless of whether or not I drive at all in a given month. So if I drive under X number of trips, let's say, for example, in a given month, it doesn't make sense to even go for car insurance because the car insurance is too expensive. I'm not even driving around that much and paying for that much in Lyft costs. Now, there's a certain point, of course, where Lyft costs are more expensive than that car insurance plus gasoline or other tolls you'd have to pay. But but it would have to be a substantial number of rides to get to that point. Now, another factor to consider on top of that whole piece is the risk. There's inherently, for me, a lot of risk in getting a car, in the fact that I'm working remotely right now. And when I say I'm working remotely right now, I mean I'm working remotely right now. And when I say that, I mean that there's no necessarily guarantee that I'm going to be indefinitely working remotely. You never know if I'm going to have to travel around, I'm going to have to move back, for example, let's say to California or something along those lines. And those are all potential challenges that make me say, okay, if I were to buy a car, especially we're looking at me right now in Florida saying, Dave, you're going to buy a car here in Florida. You're thinking to yourself, what would I have to do with that car? Either I'd have to drive it or get a moving company to move it across country if I had to do that, or I'd leave it somewhere parked, let's say sitting, for example, and then I'd just be paying for car insurance. I'd be losing value of that depreciating asset, the car, and again, it would have been a waste of costs and value. The newness goes down, the mileage goes down, just the engine as a whole goes down, starts falling apart without me even getting the use out of it that it deserves. And that's a big piece of it for me, right? With most people, you don't have to worry about that risk. You're based in an area, you drive to work here, you're based there. But you never know, and I may have to go somewhere, I may not be able to spend so much time in a given place, or may have to move completely, which I've had to do a few times due to different jobs, of course, over the course of my career. But that's just something I'm thinking about right now. So that's a big kind of a risk factor for why I hesitate to get a car anytime soon. Now, another thing I talked about in a previous video, a couple of previous videos, somewhere a couple times down the monkey chain, is the impact. This is not the impact of, but my interest in getting stocks, my interest in maybe even getting real estate, rental property, a house that I can live in, some sort of combination of the two. And for me to have that big recurring cost of at least the car insurance, if not the cost of the car itself, the vehicle itself, for me, it takes such a big recurring payment cost that would take away from my ability to invest in those other things. Again, it'd be less money I could put towards saving, it'd be less money I could put towards stocks. But, you know, the question just becomes, what's that payoff threshold, right? How much is it costing you to get around in terms of ride-sharing apps and that sort of thing? How much would it cost you to get that car insurance and make those car payments and that sort of thing? So that's kind of the point where I'm at. I'm like, does it make sense for me? I'm not sure right now. The reality is, in a perfect world, I would love to have my financial independence in order before I worried about getting a car. I'd love to be able to get that rental property investment or get some stocks and have enough stocks giving me enough dividends where I don't have to worry about that income stream or that cost source when I'm thinking about getting that car. But of course, to look at, for example, real estate or assets like that, I would need a car to get to those locations, right? A car is, in a sense, it's an asset that gets you from point A to point B. Sure, you could say it's a liability in the sense that it's a depreciating asset as well, a cost that costs you more and more over time, or you lose value on it over time, but at the same time, it's an asset in that it gets you to different locations. And that's something that a lot of the times you need to do to be able to do some of the things you want to do, whether it's getting food, going to theme parks, checking out different places, going to the beach, or just having fun, going out, having a great time, vlogging stuff, that kind of thing. The car can be quite useful in making those things happen. So one of the big questions that I'm asking myself in the car equation is a pure numbers question. One of the biggest questions is, how much in Uber, how much in Lyft, how much in rideshare costs would it cost me in order to say, okay, it makes more sense to have a car, even with that inherent risk of saying maybe I'd be leaving it around, leaving it behind, or have to transport it across the country. It just, that risk factor alone, in terms of the potential transportation of the vehicle, is such a big one for me that I really do hesitate. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. Now, a piece of that is, it does kind of lead me to thinking, well, maybe if I got an older car, it'd be less of a cost. You know, maybe it would have less time on it, less years on the vehicle, but it would also be less costly to worry about, okay, I'm just going to sell that vehicle. There'd be less depreciation. One of these finance investment YouTube channels, which I love to watch, talks about the depreciating asset of a car and buying a car later in its lifespan to make sure that you're not getting one that is going to depreciate a whole bunch when you drive it right off the lot and that sort of thing. So those are factors that come to my mind, but that's kind of, I'm thinking, if I'm thinking about getting a car, maybe it makes more sense to look at an older vehicle, but at the same point, how old is too old where it doesn't make sense? I'd rather have that brand new car warranty. So you see a lot of questions kind of tie into the scenario, and I don't know if I'd necessarily be able to find a vehicle that would make sense to buy it significantly older, because I don't know about the warranty or how well the vehicle has been taken care of. So you can see kind of this chain, this glob of problems that I can run into in thinking about getting a vehicle potentially and figuring out the next steps on that front. So the short-ish answer is I don't know. I don't know if a car makes sense. There are lots of reasons why I feel like it might be nice, but there's lots of reasons why I hesitate, and I'd love to be able to have some more stability before I make that sort of judgment call and say, okay, it makes sense for me to invest in a whole new car, and that's, again, just kind of something on my mind in terms of how I want to go about making that decision, and just giving you some insights here in this whole video in terms of my daily life. I know a lot of people requested hearing more of my day-to-day, or what does my day-to-day look like. Here's what's going on in my mind, for example, over the course of the day-to-day, or some of those things that are regularly on my mind, is that challenge of when does it make sense to have a car, and what kind of car would make sense. Again, questions that I have to take some time really analyzing and assessing. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on the car situation. What do you think? Do you think that my logic here is sound, or are there any other arguments there that you might consider? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Always love to hear your thoughts. And thank you again for being a part of all of these fun adventures with me. Now, when I think about getting a car, some of my favorite types of cars, if I'm thinking about a vehicle type, I love convertibles. I'm not gonna lie, I had a convertible for a while. Also, you know what, now I think about it, also this blue color. Have all of my cars been this blue color? What? Maybe all of my cars have been this blue color, which is very interesting to think about. But I had a convertible, it was really nice, it was really old, but it was really nice, and it was also this beautiful blue color. And I loved being able to go out and get that natural sun, drive around and get some breeze. I'm more of a car person. I couldn't see myself on a motorcycle, but I feel like a convertible is a perfect way to get that breeze, get that fresh air, and really enjoy the day and the sunlight, while at the same time feeling that stability, that comfort of 4 wheels around you, 4 doors, maybe 4 doors, maybe 2 doors, that sort of thing. So I would love a convertible. I know different people are for different types of vehicles. I know a lot of people I've spoken to kind of like crossovers, SUVs as well. And I can see the advantage of having more storage space, and it doesn't necessarily cost you that much more, depending upon what kind of vehicle you're looking at. But at the same time, I kind of like that smaller vehicle, closer to the ground, feels more kind of open, and like you can see what you're doing a little bit better. At least that's how I feel in more of that sedan. I feel like I'm less kind of in a risky position. It's less scary for me, but that's just, again, personal preference. How about you? What are your favorite types of vehicles? And don't get me wrong, I'm not against SUVs or crossovers, that sort of thing. It's just kind of how I feel sort of lately and in the moment as I'm saying kind of the vehicle type that I'd prefer as I'm thinking about this question with you here today. Thank you so much for being a part of this adventure with me here today. What did you think of this discussion? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button. Do you see it? It's right there. Or maybe it's over there. Maybe down here. Not really sure. Consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell to stay informed of all the fun adventures we gonna share with you. And until next time, play on. So all of those factors can hesitate